All right. First, I want to say good job on your papers. You guys did really phenomenal, everyone that submitted them. In this live session, we are going to go over chapter 11, but we're doing learning objectives 11.1 and 11.2. We have some poll questions, and then we're going to wrap everything up. You're going to notice that as we get closer and closer to the midterm, our chapters aren't going to be as long, but there's going to be a lot of like videos that we're going to be watching. We have a lot of discussions. And then once we get to the second half, I know for a fact you guys are going to have a lot more questions because we're going to be kind of really jumping into what you're going to be doing day in and day out. Now, with that, our quote of the week. Our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always try just one more time. As you become AST, you are going to face so many challenges, whether it's mastering the proper handing of instruments, learning sterile technique, or just really managing the pressures of operating room equipment like your microscope, bringing in the C-arm, trying to figure out the ortho table, okay? Edison quote teaches us that our biggest obstacle isn't like making mistakes, but giving up when it gets hard. Success often comes from just trying just one more time, even when you feel like you've hit the wall. In your studies and training, there are going to be times when things are not going to go as planned. Maybe you'll struggle to memorize the plethora of instruments, or maybe you feel discouraged once you get to your clinical rotations. In those moments, I want you to remind yourself that persistence is the key. Every time you push yourself to try again, you're gaining experience, you're getting knowledge, and believe it or not, it helps your confidence. Success in our world requires patience, practice, and that willingness just to keep going, especially when things seem difficult. There are going to be cases that are so stressful that in the middle, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, help. In your mind, keep pushing, okay? Your hard work will pay off, where precision and perseverance are vital. Now about those instruments. Like I said, well, this one has 11.1. So in 11.1, we review instrument or information on instrument manufacturing. I'm one of those, I love to watch those, how it's made. And so I found a video on how it's made with surgical instruments that we're going to watch, just like a little snippet. We have to identify the different types of finishes on surgical instruments because in some cases like neuro, we have different instrument finishes that we're going to use that are going to be a lot different than what we do, let's say in ortho or general or GU. And we're going to look at different types of instruments by their design. Like I mentioned, I love to kind of figure out how things are made. So before we start, we're going to watch this YouTube video on just that, how surgical instruments are made. And it's going to give us very important insight into the intricate processes behind their creation. So right off the bat, let's take a look.
Surgical instruments have evolved with the science of medicine. They actually date back thousands of years, when primitive man used crude implements to cut holes in skulls to release evil spirits. Medical science has come a long way since then, and today's surgical tools are among its advancements. In the hands of a skilled surgeon, the right tool can be a lifesaver. There are now hundreds to choose from, each designed for a specific task or operation. Made of surgical-grade steel, which is extremely corrosion resistant, they can withstand frequent cleaning and sterilizing. One of the more useful tools is a self-retaining retractor, which is used to pull back tissues or organs during surgery. Using a circular cutter, they round the profile of the tool's joint. This round joint allows the tool to open when the shanks are shut, the opposite of a pair of scissors. Next, cutters carve slots in two parts to create the retractor's intermeshing jaws. These jaws will be used to grasp and retract body tissue so the surgeon can operate. A technician sands the teeth down to a precise size. He must be accurate within 1/4 millimeter. He then smooths the jaw's teeth against a fine grit wheel so they'll easily intermesh when needed. He rounds the tips of the teeth to make them blunt so they won't damage human tissue. He hammers back the tips of the teeth, giving them a claw-like profile. With the teeth now complete, attention returns to the round joint of the instrument. The carved slots and countersink allow the two sides to fit together perfectly. They install a part called the rack below the joint and file teeth into it. It will be used to lock the tool in an open position. After heat treatment, a worker sands all the tool components to smooth sharp edges. Vibrating porcelain chips and polishing compound scrub them clean and remove burrs caused by machining. Next, they install the pivot screw and trigger for the rack. By pressing it, the surgeon can open the prongs to the desired width and lock the tool in position. Production now moves to the surgical clamp. It's used to block the flow of blood during operations and has a more scissors-like joint, rectangular instead of round. Mechanized cutters carve the joint and catches. A worker forces the finger bows against a spinning grinding wheel to remove surface imperfections. Precision is again critical, as the worker grinds each of the tool's shanks to the correct thickness. He measures to confirm that the size is consistent along the length of the part. He then files the joints so they mate perfectly. He places the joint part of one of the shanks over hot coals to soften the metal and make it malleable. Then he forces a spike through a slit in the joint, and the now compliant steel stretches to open the slit. The other shank now slides easily into the opening. He hammers the joint to close the opening, and the two arms of the surgical clamp are now hinged together. Next, he files the teeth of the clamp so they'll interlock when the tool is closed. He bends the two ends around a tool to form the jaws of the clamp. These curved jaws will come in handy when the surgeon needs to reach around organs or bone. Next, using a variety of tools, he adjusts the shanks and the finger bows to give them a more ergonomic feel. This is called soft setting because at this point, the metal is still soft enough to be manipulated. He tweaks the bend of the jaws until he's satisfied with the curvature. He smooths the inside of the finger bows with a fine abrasive belt. After heat treatment to strengthen the metal, they blast it with fine glass particles to give it a satin finish. They laser etch the company name and identifying numbers onto the surgical clamp. The numbers will allow the tool to be traced back to a particular production run. And now it's ready to take its place on the front lines of healthcare.
All right. What did y'all think about that? Did you kind of have an idea as you're going through the plethora of instruments that it was made in such a way? Or is this kind of like, huh, interesting? And I'm just curious as to what you guys are thinking. Very complex, right? By any chance, do you know the instrument that's in front of you? It is one that you are learning. It is a retractor. That is correct. What type of retractor by any chances? Right? Blast them with glass particles for that finish. Any guesses on what type of retractor you see in front of you? I can see why you would see a Beckman. This one is actually a Wheatlander. So Beckman's going to be slightly a little bit different, and I can see why you guys would see a Cerebella as well. This is a Wheatlander. This is going to be one that you're going to use most often, a lot of times in general cases, sometimes in ortho cases. Um, Not necessarily urology or any other procedures. I'm trying to think. Yeah, usually general, sometimes ortho. Now, the other ones, if you look a little bit closer, they are slightly different. And while we have time, we're talking about the instruments. Let me see if I can find one. Paste and go. Of course, AI. That's not what we're looking for. So the difference is if you notice the joint here, it has a flexible bend. Once you have them in your hand, a Wheatlander is not going to have that bend. And then for the cerebellar, since you guys asked excellent questions or excellent answers. So with the cerebellar, this is where you're looking for. This is still, and if you look at the teeth on this one where it's not as pronounced, you can see it's a little bit sharper or kind of like here. But for your Wheatlander, this particular, they come in dull or sharp. And this is going to be that instrument that is almost in every single general instrument case. Okay. Now, as you guys are going through your instruments, there are the Quizlets that are up and resources for you to go through. And I know that there's a lot of instruments, especially next week, you're going to have a lot more instruments, but still use them. And then if there is something that you kind of want to figure out, well, how do I differentiate between this one versus that one? Send me a message and I'll try to break it down for the entire class. I'll send it, whoever sends me the message, I'll of course message you first, and then I will try to break it down for the entire class. The other thing that I want you guys to remember is that you are going to have hands on and trust the process. I know that like in module 3, you're ready to get in there, you're ready to get into the lab, you're ready to get to it. But trust the process because right now we're building the information so that when you do get into mod 4 and you do get into the lab, it'll all kind of mesh together. With that, understanding instruments is really important for us as STs, right? Because that's what we're dealing with day in and day out. We have to know the names, we have to know the uses, and we have to know what they're used for. Now, I will tell you that this can be tricky. Haha. Yes, it is. Um, the often multiple nicknames are used differently depending on the situation. And so, Kyle, right off the bat, got it correctly. This is a total joint setup. Now, as you guys know, I start off in total joints. And so I have an extreme love with this particular service. And it is actually a knee. Yes, it's a total knee. The reason why you can tell specifically by the implants that you see here. You also see a tri-decker back table. We have double deckers, single, which we don't call a single decker because that would just be weird, but triple decker, double decker, and then your regular back table. This does allow for you to have more instruments kind of closer to you, and it's sterile. When I was doing these, I actually didn't have any of those. So I had multiple tables kind of like around me where I had to make sure that I was keeping everything sterile. With that, we have to manage, we have to organize hundreds of instruments. And I'm not joking. For one knee arthroplasty, I had 27 sets on my tables. 27. Now, when I say 27, do you guys think I'm using every instrument in all 27 sets? No, I'm not. So there's certain instruments that surgeons liked, and it just happened that in my particular case, we had to do a pelvic reconstruction before the knee arthroplasty. So this patient had a lot going on. And in that's why I had both trauma instruments as well as, and I was doing a hip arthroplasty, but as well as hip arthroplasty. I think I was using Stryker and J&J instruments on my back table. So we have to know our role. We have to have ability to quickly identify and retrieve instruments without hesitation. That's going to be really important for a smooth and successful surgery. At some point during the case, once all of your trials have been done, we have um, figured out what our actual implant's going to be, and we're getting ready to put the cement in. Yes, the cement, and you've got to move because once you start mixing, they're ready to start putting stuff in and letting that dry. So mastering skills takes time. I want you to show yourself some grace as you're learning it, okay? But it's still important because we are trying to give the best patient care and ensure that, our whole team is successful. So, instrument manufacturing. I got a couple of AI videos that I was working on. All right. So, surgical instruments are made from metals, okay? Designed for durability, precision, and resistant to rust. We don't want something rusting in a patient. Now, passivation is a process that treats the metal surface to remove impurities. You guys saw it, putting in a little glass, right? And improves resistance to corrosion, making the instrument safer and long lasting. Instruments are divided into 3 grades. You're going to need to know this, okay? You have your surgical grade, made from high quality stainless steel, designed for repeated use in the operating room, and is built for strict standards. We use this all the time. These are going to be your needle holders, your knife handles, your hemostats, your mosquitoes, your right angles. Okay. We have floor grade. These are mid-quality instruments used in clinicals or less critical procedures. They are not durable, but not as precise as surgical grade instruments. Anyone that's worked in the ER and you know how we have the suture removal kit from the ER, it's not going to be as sturdy or as, I would say, resistant as the ones we use in the operating room. You can actually purchase a surgical removal kit or staple removal, sterile from your local, I want to say Walgreens. And you'll notice that that's going to be a little bit different than what we actually use in the operating room. And we also have disposable grade. Now, these are single use instruments. They are made from low quality materials. They're intended to be discarded after use. So they're not going to put as much work into them. They're still going to be good. They're still going to be sterile, but they're not going to be durable because we use it, we throw it out. Now, understanding this is going to help when choosing the right instrument for the right procedure. And again, it's all about keeping the patient safe, working on efficiency. How do you think understanding instrument quality helps us make decisions during procedures? What do you guys think?
So you know what instrument to use based on the procedure? So you use the right one?
That's correct. That is absolutely correct. We need to know what we're grabbing, what we need. There are a lot of cases where we're going to use a disposable, let's say, we have what's called sucker shavers in ortho, and they do just that. We attach the instrument part to the sucker shaver, and it goes in and it suction shaves the meniscus. That attachment part is not something that we're going to use over and over again. It's going to be one-time use. However, the sucker shaver itself is something that is going to be a lot heavier, it's a lot sturdier, and we will sterilize it and use it again. It also allows us to anticipate which instruments could be used next. 100% accurate. It really does. Because in your mind, you're like, this is what we're using. This is what I need. When you're doing an ACL, and I do refer to a lot of neuro, a lot of trauma, a lot of ortho, because that's where my home is. However, we get into a children's case, and there are certain instruments that you're going to have ready just in case we get a bleeder. For example, let's say we start off laparoscopically and we are doing, let's say, just a look around. And then we get a bleeder, meaning that something got nicked. So then we go from laparoscopic to now open. So we have to be ready to kind of figure out, okay, what set am I going to need And I mean fast, because once there's blood in the abdomen, camera comes out, the surgeons want their knife, their Raytax, their Bovie, they are going to be going straight to the Bakeys and a hemostat, because you want to be able to find that bleeder, clamp it, and then you can kind of breathe a little bit. Okay. We get into different finishes. Shiny, reflective, resists rust, and is easy to clean. We're talking about the mirror finish. Okay. Our satin finish, less shiny than a mirror finish, reduces glare while still being rust resistant and easy to clean. Make sure you have a good understanding of these finishes, because you're going to have to be able to differentiate them. Now, if you're using the microscope, do you think we will use something that's highly polished mirror? Think about the camera and the light, the microscope, or will we use something a little bit differently? What do you guys think? Yeah, we're going to use something duller because you're under the microscope and you don't want that glare. So again, this also helps us as we're setting up our instruments and getting things together. Many surgical instruments are named after surgeons who invented or developed them, often reflecting their specialty or innovative contributions to our field. For example, DeBakey was named after Dr. Michael DeBakey, who was a pioneering cardiovascular surgeon. DeBakey forceps, believe it or not, are commonly used in delicate tissues, not just cardiovascular, but a lot of times we use them in general trauma. We use them in neuro. We use them in GU. We use them in plastics if we're not using cushions or some other forcep. They have atraumatic design, meaning they really go in there and they minimize damage, making them ideal for handling blood vessels and soft organs without like crushing them or causing some type of injury. Statinskys are Cooley instruments. Now, they are named after two, Dr. Edward Statinsky and Dr. Denton Cooley. These instruments are used in, again, cardiovascular surgery, but we also use them in general. We also use them, well, really vascular as well. Now, the Statinsky clamp is a specialized vascular clamp used to kind of go in and it'll occlude large vessels like the vena cava during surgery without fully stopping the blood flow. So it allows for some blood to still go to where it needs to go. The Cooley clamp is another vascular clamp designed by Dr. Cooley, and it's used for delicate cardiovascular procedures, particularly in like aortic and cardiac surgeries. And I have pictures of these individuals. So this is Dr. DeBakey, and then you have Statinsky and Cooley. We have Dr. Cloward. Dr. Ralph Cloward specialized in spine. So a lot of his retractors we use in a lot of spinal surgeries, particularly when we're talking about cervical spine operations, because it provides just a little bit better visibility of that surgical area. And the very last one is Castroviejo. Now, with Castroviejo, you're going to see him in a lot of like ophthalmology or very small micro instrument type. And that's because the Castroviejo needle holders are very fine. They're very delicate instruments used for micro surgical procedures, particularly again in ophthalmology. And we do use Castroviejos in vascular and plastics as well, because it's just a lot more precision. You get to go have small, fine needles during surgery. But I want to kind of show you how small these are. So let me, if you guys don't mind, granted, I know you're going to be able. So these are your Castroviejos. Let's get them. Okay. Now, these are a lot smaller. And what I want you to notice is there's a locking mechanism right here. So I want you to think about using super tiny needles a lot of times, 9-0, 10-0, 11-0 needles, and you can lock them. Okay. Now, there are some that don't lock, and there's a little trick that we do in the operating room with those. When I'm in eyes, I'll have like a syringe back, put my needle on, put the needle holder in the syringe or in the syringe cap, and that kind of just hold it. Does the same thing because some do not lock. Okay. All right. I know there's a lot. Let's see if you can recognize the instrument in the slide. What instrument is that? I'll give you a hint. You're going to have this in every single case. Yeah, pretty much. Yes, it is a knife handle. Okay. Your week 3 Quizlet. For those of you who are here, you can take a look at it now and see exactly how many instruments I placed in here for you. And it's going to make me log in, but I have put 256 instruments for y'all. This is every single instrument for the most part. I think there was only 2 that I didn't get in. Every instrument in here, okay? Use this as an additional resource. Again, I want y'all to remember that we are building you up before you actually get these instruments in your hand. So at least you'll be able to recognize them, all right? So you have the number 3 knife handle, 4 scalpel, it's a little bit thicker. Knife handles are going to be a lot easier to identify because hint, hint, the numbers are here. We don't scratch numbers out. So if you see the handle, look for the number, okay? Hint, hint. Number 5, way different. Be able to process of elimination of that one. Number 7, we use these for our number 15s or number 11s. Knife or blades. So just keep that in mind. You're not going to usually have a 10 on that unless the surgeon is different. And what I mean is it's a bigger blade. So you're not going to have that size of a blade on that knife handle. Okay. You're going to have this size of a blade. Does that help? Kind of get you guys comfortable. My biggest thing is getting you comfortable because I understand as a student, learning instruments was very daunting. And I was like, oh my goodness, I gotta learn all these instruments. And when I went to school, a long time ago, we actually had to make sure we spelt the names correctly or they marked off. And I'm so glad that, anyways, because some of these terms are very long. Let's see if I can find one that has a very long name so you guys can see. Okay, well, some of the names are extremely long, and as you guys are going through, you're gonna hear like Atson, Brown, blah blah blah. Like we had to make sure we spelled everything correctly. And in full transparency, some doctors don't even know the name. So a lot of times you'll hear them say, "Give me what I need, not what I asked for." What do you guys think that means? Give me what I need, not what I asked for.
It means we should know the instrument because that's our job.
Yep, I like that. Read my mind. And we laugh, but I literally had a surgeon was like, "Give me the Black Mariah." That is not a real name of an instrument, but it was a cob that happened to have a black handle on it. And so that was his name. And so a lot of times you're going to get with surgeons and you're going to build a rapport. And in your mind, you're just like, that is not what that's called, but here you go. You should know the next step and the required instruments for, and that is also true. A lot of times we as techs, we're thinking 3 and 4 steps ahead because we're kind of like, if something happens and we need to backtrack, what do I have to get ready? And there's been many cases where we're going through, and I'm looking, I'm like, mm-mm. And so I would backtrack and reload a couple steps back, and the doctor would be like, oh yeah, I'm like, let's go, we're ready to keep it moving. All right, again, what instrument do you think this is? I'll give you a hint. It is sutures. I mean, no, I didn't. These are your suture scissors, suture mayo scissors. Yeah, I just did that. You guys get it, right? It's your Mayo scissors. Now, in the operating room, we do have some scissors that we will definitely give. So your curved Mayo scissors, these are going to be mainly for like tough muscle, and then we have suture Mayo scissors that are straight that we use only for sutures. Okay? Now, let's get into 11.2. For 11.2, we're talking about different types of instruments by their actual function now. And we have to also classify instruments by their tissue type. Now, keep in mind, we're going to continue and kind of like finish up chapter 11 and chapter or next week. All right. But The slide in front of you shows common types of instruments categorized by their function. We have to kind of understand these distinctions because one, it is going to definitely help you guys anticipate and just move faster, be able to kind of be one with your surgeon. My best cases, believe it or not, is when me and my surgeon are not talking. And I'm not saying like it's quiet, but I mean, they're not asking me for instruments and I'm not repeating. Like we're just flowing. We're talking about how kids were doing, what they had over the weekend, but we're moving. Those are some of my favorite cases because it's just we're just flowing. Like I'm looking, I know what they need, they know that I know what they need, and we're just moving. Okay, and you guys will get there, I promise. Now we look at why it's important for us to understand this. Now all of these instruments are designed to minimize tissue damage while enhancing precision and controlling different things during surgery. The selection of surgical instruments is going to be based on the tissue, the depth of the surgical wound, and the technical requirement, I guess you could say, of that instrument. And then ultimately, the surgeon's preference. We're going to talk about the surgeon's preference card, which is our holy grail in the operating room. Now, surgical specialties have particular instrumentation. Remember, I mentioned how some surgeons have their own instruments that they have at their facilities? Certain services also have designated instruments for them. Like Statinskys are mainly going to be in your vascular and heart. You can still grab them, but if you want them in a set, you probably go to the area where it's vascular or cardiovascular. Now, for hearts, I keep saying cardiovascular, but theirs is completely different. Their section is usually by itself for obvious reasons. Okay, so we look at, and I'm going to break this down for y'all. Okay, y'all know I'm visual, so if you have the slide that I presented, in the um week 2 reminder, it's a good opportunity because I'm going to break this down. We're starting with skin. We use a scalpel because this is the very first thing. What you'll notice as we're surface. So the instruments we're going to use here are not going to be something that's going to go really deep. We're not using something like an Army Navy or anything like that. Okay. So you have usually this one's a 15 blade on a number 7 knife handle. I'll normally give the surgeon some Adsons with teeth because I need them to be able to pick up the skin edges. And usually if they have an assistant, I'll give them a skin hook, nothing too deep. Or if it's just me, I'm either going to use a skin hook that way with my right hand, and then I'm starting to pass instruments with my left. Remember, I said you're going to become ambidextrous. It's just the nature, okay? Especially if you work an off shift, then it's going to be literally second nature. Okay, so when you think surface, we're not deep. Visceral or serosa. Now, when I talk about visceral or serosa, this is thin. This is delicate tissue covering organs. So Mr. DeBakey comes in. We have a picture of DeBakey's. Now, if you look at the tips, they're going to be a lot finer. They are non-traumatic forceps. They are ideal for handling all of this delicate tissue like viscera. So what am I talking about? Lungs, pleural spaces, stuff that could be easily damaged. We'll also use Metzenbaum scissors. They're going to be a little bit longer. These are for precise cutting of delicate tissues, again, without causing damage. Okay. So now we're in the lung, we're in the spleen, we're in the liver, we're in the thyroid. Okay. We have what's called sponge forceps. What you see in front of you are actually Babcock forceps, but sponge forceps for holding sponges. A lot of times we'll put in what we call it a sponge stick, where we'll take a Ratex, and you guys are going to learn this in the lab, and we make it so that it can get blood, but keep things dry without causing damage. It absorbs excess fluid without kind of messing up organs. Your Babcocks, the ones that you see in front of you, right here, non-traumatic, grasping of soft organs such as the liver for the spleen or the spleen. We also use these in open appendectomies. Why? Because this Babcock can go around the appendage of the appendix. It's at the appropriate size that it goes right around it, and then we can kind of tie off the appendix to remove it. We have peritoneum, which is next. So look at where that's at, okay? With the peritoneum, we'll have Metzenbaum scissors for fine dissection of the peritoneum. We'll also, again, have those DeBakey's with us. They're a little bit further down in the body. So we have taken away DeBakey's. We have taken away skin hooks, right? Because we're too far down. Now, what happens with the DeBakey's is they're going to actually be used to hold up the peritoneum. And then the scissors are either going to be dissecting or cutting. So we use the scissors for blunt dissection, kind of moving away the tissue, just so that a lot of times we have to remove or hold the peritoneum. And that's what the DeBakey's are also used for. Okay. Fat. One thing about adipose tissue, it is very oily. So a lot of times you'll have like your moist latex because you're going to want to wipe off the oil. All right. Now, here are those curved Mayo scissors. Adipose tissue is also very thick, not as strong as muscle, but it's still thick. So the Mayo sutures are good for cutting through thicker fatty tissue. We may even have Alice clamps. What the Alice clamps will do is we'll put an Alice clamp on one side, an Alice clamp on the other side. Sometimes the surgeon will have us hold up and then they'll cut. And they also may have other types of instruments. Now, for muscle, and this is a perfect example of what I was showing you. You see how they have the clamps, the Alice clamps holding up the tissue? If it's just you and the surgeon, this is you. Comes a little bit tricky because then you have to trust that your doctor or your surgeon is not going to mess up your Mayo stand of your instruments. Depends on how your rapport is. If they don't have Alice clamps, they can use cokers as well. Most likely, the cokers can do the same thing. The cokers have teeth where it'll get attached to the sides and you can hold it up to kind of get the muscle. Does this make sense as we're breaking this down? Does it kind of help with the visualization? The biggest thing is the higher you up, the higher up you are on the scan, the smaller your instruments. The deeper you go, remember you're going to be switching to longer instruments. That's the easiest way to remember. So if you are on the skin, you want shorter instruments. Once you start getting inside of the belly, you're going to be looking back and start preparing your longer instruments so that you can get into the body. And then there's bone. We have a lot of rongeurs that we do, osteotomes for chiseling the bone. What you're going to notice in ortho is a lot of the instrumentation looks like you go get it from Home Depot, but I guarantee you it costs a lot more, okay? But we're cutting bone, we're chiseling, we're drilling, we're doing all the same things. And then for cartilage and tendons, I want you to think of an ACL repair. A lot of times we'll use the patient's own tendons, and so we'll use what's called a tendon stripper. That's what this is. It's a tendon stripper. What we do is we'll take the tendon stripper, we'll go into one of the tendons that we're going to use, strip it from the patient. Sometimes they'll allow, get it, scope of practice. Okay, a lot of times I was in the back prepping the tendon, but scope of practice, we're preparing that to put back into ACL, MCL, PCL, depending on what was torn. Okay, but in ortho, you're going to most likely use those tougher Mayo scissors. Okay, let's look at a couple more instruments. This time I gave you some options. Looking at this instrument, it's used for grasping or retracting tissue that is being removed. What do you think this is? And granted, I will give you another hint. This is a laparoscopic instrument, and the laparoscopic instruments are the same as regular. They just go in through the camera. That's the only difference. So I can see why you would think biopsy. I can see why you would say mosquito. Now, with biopsy, someone's got it, but before we go through, I want to explain to why the other ones are not correct. 2 people have got it. 3 people, 4. Okay, you guys are on a roll. For biopsy, with those types, I want you to think of like a cup or something because we're going to take something out. When we look at a mosquito, the mosquito is something they're going to hold together. Dressing forceps, those are pickups. So I have my tweezers here. I have an instrument set that I'm going to show you guys, but think of pickups. I don't know if you guys can even see it a little bit. Okay. But these are tenaculum forceps. Okay. Here's another one. Now, I kind of mentioned these earlier. We can use them to kind of hold up. So they're grasping organs or tissue. Alice Adhar clamps. That is correct. Now, I had to be able to spell all that out. I am not the best speller, let me just tell you. But yes, Alice, and you usually, the doctor's not going to say Alice Adhar clamp. They're going to be like Alice, Coker, mosquito, snap. Sometimes they'll snap. Sometimes you'll see a scissor, and you're looking to see where they are, especially if they're doing scissor and you're looking like, okay, they want Mets, they want suture. Pickups, see if I can kind of pickups, scissor, snap, stitch. Okay. And you guys will learn all that. Now, I mentioned that as we get closer, these chapters are not as long, but it's filled with a lot of information. So, this is your opportunity to really ask questions. With that, what questions do you have for me? That's exactly what it is, operating room sign language. It really is. It really is. I like how you said that. What questions do you have for me before we get into our poll questions?
What do you think is the best way to study these? Like I ordered on Amazon these flashcards. It's like 300 flashcards and it has the picture of them and it has, you know, like them labeled. But other than that, do you recommend any other way to
That's
like
the best way
study?
to get into the lab. So what we would do is, because you're not in the lab yet, one of the ways that we kind of broke the students up is kind of get them in groups, have them hands on, and what they would do is take the instruments, name them, mix them up, and then have each person kind of what question, which one is this, which one is that, and it really helps because one, somebody may know something. Let's say Carmen knows an instrument a little bit better than Anna or you, and then you know, that was the one way I saw the students be extremely successful. Again, I know that y'all aren't there yet, but what you're doing right now is the best way, to be honest with you, at this level, until you can kind of get into it. And the other thing is, I know that pictures are not the best, right? Because some are blurry, some of this. Once you guys take the quiz, I promise you, if something is blurry, y'all just let me know because I'm gonna do what I need to do for y'all. If y'all get that, right? And then once you get to module 4, that's where you guys come as a group and really kind of like, hey, and bigger than that, once you guys get to clinicals, because some of y'all are going to see a lot more instruments than others. And think about it. You may go to a facility that does a lot of general plastics, cranies, hearts. Amber may go to a facility that does a lot of ortho, usually ortho, neuro, some plastics. Trevor may go somewhere where they do a lot of eyes. So that means that you guys will be kind of like subject matter experts in those little areas. And so I mean, that's what got me through because they were like, y'all know I never did ortho as a student. And what did I do once I got out? Went straight to ortho because that's what I wanted. But it was because we kind of helped each other. So that's just one suggestion. But you guys, what she's doing right now with that flashcard is the best. Um, Also the Quizlets, okay? Because again, it's kind of like trust in the process and we get it. So we're not going to be like, oh my gosh, you don't know all these 256 instruments. Y'all know I'm not going to be like that. But when there is something that's like, hey, I can't differentiate between a mosquito and a cryo because that could happen. They're both small instruments. Let me know, and then I'll try to kind of break it down. If I've got to do additional like little videos or one-on-ones, y'all just let me know, because our goal is to really get you guys to really understand it and feel confident when you're in these spaces. Okay. So for those of you who are watching the playback, I'm going to give you guys the same opportunity that everyone is here has these questions. It's going to be under the archive. I feel like that's the easiest way, because I know, especially mod 2, I would have a whole bunch of stuff in announcements and it would get kind of compounded and kind of lost. And I really don't want that for y'all. I want y'all to be able to have easy access. So if there's any additional like videos, any additional like extra stuff, I'm going to put it in the archive so that of that week. So then it's right there. Does that kind of help a little bit? All right, awesome. So that's where you guys will see things kind of like from now on as we kind of keep going. With that, I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes. I'm not going to bother you. I'm going to be quiet, and then we'll come back and wrap up. Give you guys a couple more, probably about a minute or more, and then I'm going to end the poll. For those of you who are here, will be able to see it. And then again, like I mentioned, for those who aren't here, you're going to get the same opportunity everyone here has in the archive. And then I have a question that I'm going to answer once you guys come back. All right, going to end the poll. I'm going to share the results. For those of you who are here, please let me know if you can actually see the correct answers. Perfect. All right. So the question was, They've been watching ER and they were curious as to how long I have held tissue up, and it really depended on the case. I've had shoulder cases where I was holding the entire like 2 or 3 hours. um, when we get into certain belly cases, if there was no assistance, like let's say I was working an off shift where it's just me and the surgeon and I'm doing overnight, then I'm going to be doing the entire case, whether it's a 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour case. And so in those cases, what I normally do is set myself up. So if I know that I'm already, because a lot of times at night, you already know if it's going to be you and your surgeon. So you kind of place your items in a place where if you do have to hold retraction, you're able to still get your stuff depending on what side you are on the case. And usually you're opposite of the surgeon when it's just you and them, usually. Okay. There's some instances where you're on the same side of the surgeon, you're maybe diagonal from the surgeon if there's a lot of people there. And that's a really good question. You do get sore sometimes. Um, your arms may get tired. Uh, Wearing the right shoes, and I can't say what's the right shoes for you guys. I have flat feet, so I tried every Birkenstocked. For me, just some good old Ricas were good for me, and compression stockings really helped with like fatigue. Once you, because a lot of times you may be standing up the whole, like you may be in a 8 hour case where you go get a break. Someone scrubs you out and then you come back. If you work longer cases, or like I would come in at the children's hospital, I would come in from 3 to 11. And so what they would try to do is have the daytime people finish up their cases, and then I would kind of go into one of the longer cases that were still going on. Let's say it was a spine case, because a lot of times those are 12, 18-hour cases, especially when we're doing scoliosis. So I would go in around like the 4 o'clock time frame or 3:30 and kind of like finish it up. Those are a little bit different because I'm not holding retraction, but like for your shoulders, legs, different things. It could be a good 2, 3 hours depending on the case. Um, does that, any other questions about that? Because I mean, that's a really good question, because you may be that person holding instrumentation if it's an off shift. And I say if it's an off shift because a lot of times during the day shift, they have their residents, their fellows, they have students. There's usually a lot more people there. It's usually when you're on an off shift where it'll be you and that surgeon, or like if you're on call, that's when you more than likely be the one passing instruments and holding retraction. Does that kind of help answer? Okay. And that's a really good question. So, what did we learn today? And I see you, yes. What did we learn today? We looked at instrumentation. We broke it down. We watched a video on how it's made, which I thought was really cool because it gives you a different insight on how everything comes together from production to it getting to us, right? We looked at sterilization. We saw how we clean them, but now we look at how we get them from the manufacturers. We looked at a lot of different instruments. We understand now that depending on where we are in the surgical case, the surgical site, it's going to really depend on what instrumentation we're going to give our surgeons, which is really big, especially when you're in a long case where, let's say, you're doing an abdominal laparotomy where we're cutting through the layers of the skin. And so in those cases, you're going to really see how you go from small to large, from large back up to small as you close. We also saw that certain body parts, certain organs, are going to require different types of instrument on top of the length of where we are. We did a poll where we looked at couple questions that you may see different concepts on this week's quiz. Now, with that, if y'all come up with any questions at all, please do not hesitate to reach out. Okay. For those of you who are watching the archive, now I want you to think surgically, because some surgeons are left handed, some surgeons are right handed, some surgeons will take instruments in either hand. How does the design of a right angled instrument enhance its effectiveness during specific surgical procedures? And in what situations would this shape provide the greatest advantage. Now, I want you to think about a right angle and what it does. What strategies are you going to use to not only memorize the names of surgical instruments, but also really develop a deep understanding of their uses and proper handling in various procedures? I do encourage you guys to find YouTube videos that actually look at instruments. Don't look at the videos now as to the case. I want you to start paying attention to what instrumentation they're using during those cases, because now your eyes are going to flip to different. Before, you were watching the videos and was probably like, that's pretty cool. But now hone in. Are they using those Stratinskys? Are they using DeBakey's? Are they using Adsons? Kind of look at the color of the suture. I know we don't know sutures yet, but look at the color of the suture they're using and where they're using it, because I can guarantee you the sutures we use in the cranium are going to be different than the sutures we use in the lip, that are going to be different than the sutures that we use on the abdomen. The last question, and what types of surgeries or tasks would you use a straight scissor over a curved? Our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always try just one more time. That was our quote of the week. Anything else you guys want to ask? All right. The fun is about to start, y'all. So I want y'all to get ready, because from here, it's all about what we do. We got decon and sterilization out the way. It's still in the midterm, but we got it out the way. With that, I want you guys to have a wonderful rest of your evening, rest of your night. I will see everyone who can attend on Wednesday's live session. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.